Welcome. Can everyone hear me at the back of the room? Great. I'm Denise Dakin, and I'm the Director of Workforce and Personal Development at Algonquin College in Ottawa. And I have the pleasure today of facilitating this very exciting workshop. It is it's 2 segments, so it's going to be a little bit longer than some of the other ones you may have attended, but all the more exciting. So we encourage you to stick around because we're going to have lots of times for brainstorming, lots of time for brainstorming, discussion, etc. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to start out with a sort of an overview of sort of intergenerational differences. What are the differences in generations? How that impacts the mature worker, and how do we embrace their skills and their differences, and how do we assist employers and the workers in being able to do that? So we see it as being kind of an interesting and fun workshop. I always have to start with this one. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this before, but I thought it's so typical. It says, the caption says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Gates, the computer science department refuses to give you any prior learning credits for your work experience." And I think of that and think, wow. So hopefully we're way beyond that and we're doing much greater things. The things I want you to think about is as you go through this discussion is we're all convinced that mature workers have a wide range of skills based on their experience, their work experience, and their application to life. And we also believe that, but they believe that that employers are reluctant to hire them because of their age. And that continues to be an issue for the mature worker. I certainly see it at our college, and I know other people see that as well. And there's a real lack of confidence in going about seeking employment. And of course, we've got the other challenge with an aging population. Employers are being challenged to capitalize on existing skills. So we've got kind of a dilemma going on, but it's a positive thing, and it encourages employers to look at a variety of demographics to obtain the skilled workers that they need. So I think we're at a good position, at a good point. So what this workshop is going to do is it's going to explore the issues and challenges that mature workers and employers experience and how the recognition of prior learning can have an impact on that. How can we help to overcome barriers? The second thing is it's going to explore key differences between generations that can be effectively managed in order to embrace all skills and capabilities. And then what we're going to do is after we've done that, we're going to look at specific projects where they're in fact doing this and seeing how they're addressing these barriers and how coming up with solutions to try and work through these issues. So that's kind of the vision of what we're going to do today. There will be an opportunity at the end of each presentation just for a few questions, sort of burning questions that you may have, and some discussion. I'm hoping we'll get some time at the end to do a bit of brainstorming and some exploring around with what we've found. All right? Does that sound good to everyone? Great. So I want to introduce Nora Spinks. Nora is here. She's the CEO of the Vanier Institute of the Family in Ottawa. She's going to speak about leveraging generational diversity in the workplace, how to create an inclusive environment, optimize engagement, and facilitate intergenerational collaboration. And so Nora has a tremendous background, particularly around the whole quality of work life and occupations and how to balance it all. So I'm very interested in hearing what she has to say and how that connects. So I'd like to welcome Nora.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to start with a quote, and I want you to tell me when you think this quote was first recorded. "The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and are tyrants over their teachers." Any guesses? 70s? Biblical times? Socrates is right, 200 BC. And I share this quote with you at the beginning of conversations about generations because generational conflict and misunderstanding have been around since we have. So not to underplay the challenges in today's workplace, but the reality is that it's a good sign. It's a sign that we are evolving as expected, and without it, it wouldn't be such a good idea. So here's one more. This one's a little bit more current. The world is passing through turbulent times. The young people of today think of nothing but themselves. They have no reverence for parents or old age. They are impatient of all restraint. They talk as if they alone know everything, and what passes for wisdom with us is foolishness with them. And as for the girls, they are forward, immodest, and unladylike in speech, behavior, and dress. Any guesses? Now, if you have teenagers at home, you can't participate, because this is timeless. But this was actually recorded in 1274. And I shared this one with you because we can learn from the past, but the reality is that from a human development perspective, when we're in our 20s, we think we know everything. And by the time we reach 30, we realize there's a lot that we've still yet to learn. And by our 40s, we realize there's more that we don't know than what we do know. And by the time we're in our 50s, we're beginning to get exhausted and trying to learn everything that we can possibly learn. And by the time we reach the age of 60 or enter the stage of human development we refer to as wisdom, we begin to realize that it's time to start resting our support on others to know the things that we don't know. And that is a luxury, because right now in the world of work in North America, the baby boomers are turning 60 at a rate of 1 every 7 seconds. So every 7 seconds, another boomer reaches that stage of wisdom. Also a good thing. But the reality is we are all getting older, and we're all getting older one day at a time. Now, the reality is whether you are a baby boomer or not, you are heavily influenced by this particular generation for a whole host of reasons. One, all workplace policies, programs, practices, by and large, in most workplaces, were either designed for or designed by the boomer generation. And this is a generation that, since its existence, has had a massive change or impact on everything that it touched. Before the baby boom, which everybody sort of agrees to is 9 months after the end of the Second World War, is where the baby boom begins. Where it ends depends on whether you're a demographer, an economist, a sociologist, or a psychologist, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So you've got this population that before they were born, babies were just born. By the time the baby boomers came along, we created maternity wards. By the time the baby boomers got to be kindergarten age, we invested heavily in education and created school districts and school systems across this country. By the time they got to university age and college, we created apprenticeship programs and spots in colleges and universities across this country. We created enormous opportunities for more, proportionately for that generation than any other previously, to participate in post-secondary education. And now that this generation is approaching 60 and into their 70s, the top end now up around the 65, 66 years of age range, we're now having all these discussions about retirement and redefining when end of work happens and when retirement begins. We're totally redefining what that means. And if you saw the front pages of the paper today, we're also discussing end of life. And what is that whole death and dying process going to be as this generation moves into that sphere? So this is a generation we have to pay very close attention to. Whether you're part of it or not, we need to understand it in order to understand how best to manage a multi-generational workforce. Now, in the paid labor force today, there are now four biological generations, 5, 6, soon to be 7 behavioral generations in the world of work. Historically, there were 3. And you started your career at the bottom when you were young and sort of moved up to the middle and middle age, and then by the time you got to that stage of wisdom, you sort of got to the top. And the likelihood of somebody at the top coming into day-to-day contact with somebody at the bottom was slim to none. And the likelihood is, as you progressed, you moved with your own generation, and you reported to somebody who was your generation or slightly older. Now, the reality is you're going to come in day-to-day contact with at least 4, 5, 6 different behavioral generations in your workplace at any one time. And for most of you, before you retire, that number is going to be 7 and 8, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But when we look at the likelihood is that you're going to come in contact with every one of those generations on an ongoing basis. If you're in your 40s today, you have just as much likelihood of reporting to somebody younger than you than older than you, and that's going to continue throughout your career. So when we look at generations, it's critically important to recognize that we're in uncharted territory, that there's not a lot of history that we can depend on that guide us in this wonderful generational diversity in the workplace. But it's not just in the workplace where our workforce is getting older. Depending on your industry now, the population in Canada's average age now is 39.9, the oldest it's been on record. And in most workplaces, your average age can be anywhere from mid-30s right through to, in some industries we're working in the forestry industry and in gas and oil and mining and some of the highly skilled positions, the average age of that particular segment of the workforce is 57 to 62. So we're seeing a very much older workforce than ever before in most industries, with a few minor exceptions. But it's not just in the workplace that we're seeing much older workers, but the older getting older. Now this slide's a little hard to read, but it says, "Happy 100th birthday, love, Mom and Dad." Now I know you're full of pasta and, it's tough to stay awake, but what's important to recognize here is that we're all living longer. And the fact that we're living longer, right now in Canada, the fastest growing population are those over the age of 80. So when you think about it, what we're doing now is building mind, body, spirits to live to be 100. And you want your health span and your lifespan to be the same. And so what we want to do is we want to recognize that there's a greater likelihood today that you will live to see 100 than ever before. Right now, the World Health Organization estimates 185,000 worldwide. By 2050, that number is going to mushroom to 2.2 million. Some of you in this room will be part of this cohort. What you want to do is you want to make sure that your health span and your lifespan are in sync, because you don't want to live longer than you have good health. And so this is changing everything in the way in which we think about work, labor force participation, ending careers, moving from a full-time paid employment to whatever we're now going to call it. If it's not retirement, what is it? We need to have these conversations. Now, having said that, the workforce is more diverse than ever before, including not just generations, but genders and cultures and languages, and each one of those has a different perspective on generations and aging. But our lives are also more complex. We've created a whole new set of dynamics in our personal lives that impact our lives at work. We've introduced this concept of pre-adulthood. Right now, if you're between the ages of 20 and 30, you have a 68% chance in Canada of living with your parents at some time in that period. This is a growing phenomenon, many by choice, some by circumstance, but this concept of pre-adulthood is new. In the past, if you were in your 20s and you were starting out your career, if your boss said jump, you'd say how high, and then you would meet or exceed that expectation. Because the fear was if you didn't, you'd lose your job. If you lost your job, you'd lose your income, you'd lose your apartment, you'd lose your independence. Oh my God, you'd end up living with your mother. Now you're living with mom anyway, so the pressures are a little bit different. There's not the same kind of stigma attached to living at home well into your 30s. Now, if you happen to have somebody in this age category in your household or in your life, just be aware that when they do return, 2/3 of them bring somebody with them. Just so you're ready. We're having our families later. We're having fewer children in most cases around the world. We've created this phenomenon of grandmothers in the paid labor force. Those baby boomers that I talked about earlier are still in the paid labor force. Those grandmothers who historically have provided the care for postpartum and new babies, new mothers, can't get leave. So dads are taking it. And dads are taking it either by that circumstance or by choice. In fact, in the province of Quebec, 87% of eligible dads took some type of paternity leave in 2010. numbers that we had not expected ever to reach. But it's happening, and it's not just happening because they want to, it's happening because grandma's not available and somebody's got to do it. We're also seeing, as a result of that, gender convergence. So caring for children, caring for elders is now the responsibility of both men and women, and the diversity factors, or the differences between the two, are shrinking dramatically, in most cases disappeared entirely. Now, when we talk about that experience, it adds to the concept of prior learning. When we talk about prior learning through this lens, we're looking at it through a couple of unique perspectives. It's getting information, it's getting knowledge, it's becoming wise, but it's looking at relatively different lens as we look through on this particular file. So we've got education, we all know that. Now, if you're part of the baby boom generation, when you were growing up, the expectation was you'd go to school, and then you'd go to work, and then you'd retire and you'd get to play. Well, today's generation is you work a little, you play a little, you go to school a little, you work a little, you take a sabbatical, you work a little, you go to school a little, you play a little, and that's going to continue well into your 70s and in some cases into your 80s. Now, when I was in high school in the province of Quebec, we had a meeting with the guidance counselor to choose your career path. And it happened in grade 9 or grade 10, and you were given 5 minutes with a total stranger to determine your entire life path. And according to my diary of the time, I had my meeting with a gentleman who I'd never met, who sat down and was reading his my education file, which was about this thick at the time. And behind him was a poster. Now we're talking urban Montreal, we're talking during an extraordinarily dynamic time when it comes to politics and change, and it was an exciting time. But the picture was a picture of a farmer's field, and it was freshly plowed, and it caught my attention. But not as much as the caption underneath, which read, "Choose your rut carefully. You're going to be in it for a long time." Not particularly inspiring, but very much truth in that generation. When my son was in high school, he was in Toronto, and he had his hour-and-a-half consultation with his homeroom teacher, with the guidance counselor, with the football coach, with 5 other people, me, his dad, his best friend, and planning. And the posters all around the room were things like, choose math, you can do anything. Big difference in a very short period of time. Work experience is unique from one generation to the other. Today's 30-year-olds who are starting to have families, who are in the paid labor force, they got their first work experience through a connection with a peer, not a parent. This is the first time that for early career, early job experience, it was with, in most cases, service sector, retail, tourism, and they got to know about these available jobs through their friends. So they grow up thinking, by and large, work sucks, according to the research. 3 things that this generation identified as teens what work was going to be like. Work sucks, coworkers are idiots, and bosses are jerks. Well, they grew up in an era where their parents experienced pretty much that. So they enter the paid labor force as children in their early teens through a connection with a peer. So they're experiencing work for the first time. And they're working by and large with other 17-year-olds. So work sucks. You get 3-hour shifts, minimum wage, sucky uniforms, not a lot of notice, no time with your friends. Your coworkers are idiots. Well, they're all in the same boat as you are, and your boss is a jerk. They're the 17-year-old with a key. And so their work experience is a little bit different than work experience of older generations. You factor in life experience. In life, older generations spent their early adulthood, well, they reached adulthood technically achieving 5 key elements: completing your education, leaving your family home, that you'll be in for a long time, partnering, and starting a family. And most boomers had accomplished all of those things by their 23rd birthday. 30-year-olds are at somewhere between their 30th and their 35th birthday. So adding a whole decade to that process. It's also a greater likelihood that they're going to have multiple partners from who they're living with, but who they're having families with. The younger you are, the greater the likelihood is that you'll have a couple of relationships. But parenting, caregiving teaches us a lot more than anybody is given credit for in many generations, and it's something that we're now beginning to recognize, and if we have time, I can get into that. But right now, we have traditionalists who were born in the 40s, 10 in the 50s, and are now in their mid to late 60s. Those are the folks who provide us with the wisdom and the experience and the knowledge, and they're the ones that created the work opportunities for the boomers, who were born in the 50s, 10 in the 60s. And I give you 10 because this is when kids start understanding cognitively what work means and what work's going to be like, and that's when they start forming their expectations, perceptions, ideas about work. Then we have the trailing boomers. Those of you who are now roughly in your mid-40s to mid-50s, you're the trailing boomers. You know who you are. You're often lumped in with the boomers, but you're never really one of them. You are very different in the way you think. When you went to university, unlike the boomers who got grants, trailers, what did you get? Loans. Loans, you had to pay them back at prime plus 1, 2, 3, and prime at that time was like 17, 18%. Like this is one of the reasons why, statistically speaking, the trailing boomers are the most overworked, overwhelmed, overloaded, and overlooked generation in the paid labor force. Statistically speaking, we're also the crankiest. So pay attention to them because they're going to be around for a while and we're going to have to figure out how to all get along. Nexus generation, those are those who are now starting families. Nexus generation were parented largely by the late traditionalist early boomers, now roughly 35 to 45 years of age. The net generation, those are now in their late 20s, also into their early 30s. They're the ones who will be the new parents of tomorrow. Gen I come first, I'm special, I'm unique, iPod, iTunes, instant gratification, instant messaging, information, internet, I. They're now in the paid labor force if you have interns, student placements, if you have any opportunities for adolescents to start employment, they're Gen Is. Gen Is are parented largely by those cranky trailing boomers. They're very independent, and I'll explain that in just a minute. And then there's the we generation. And the we generation are roughly 10 and younger. We haven't corrupted them yet, but they're coming, and they're coming fast, and most of us in this room will work with them at least for a year or two before we enter whatever that is after retirement or career redefinement in the future. But just one quick example of how quickly things change when it comes to things like, decision making. If you were a traditionalist or a boomer when you were growing up and you started your career, how much involvement did you have in family decision-making or decision-making in the workplace? None. Let's imagine mom and dad are trying to decide what they're going to do for a summer vacation, and they're trying to decide between camping and a road trip. What kind of involvement did you have in that decision-making? None. How much information did you get once that decision was made? Get in the car. Now, Gen X is a very complicated generation, and Gen X was the first generation that parents consulted. So we're thinking about road trip or camping. What do you think? And the kids would provide their input, parents would go away, make up their mind, they'd come back and they'd explain their decision in excruciating detail. Well, we've decided we're going camping this year for these reasons, and your input had this impact on the decision, and you're going to be the navigator, and you're going to pack the toys, and you're going to pack the jackets, all kinds of information. The net generation, road trip, camping, vote, majority rules. Now, Gen I, parented by those cranky, overworked trailing boomers, they don't wait to be consulted. They know how busy their parents are, so somewhere around mid-February, they show up at the dinner table. Mom, Dad, Been thinking about family vacation? We haven't been camping for a while. Bon Echo Provincial Park, campsite 263 is available second week in July. I just put a deposit down on your Visa card. You might want to book the time off. And what do those cranky trailing boomers say? Oh, thanks so much for taking the initiative. Really appreciate it. We're all in the paid labor force at the same time. Is this beginning to make some sense now, what this is all about? But these we generations, these ones coming up, they have been exposed to iPhones and iPads since infancy. Right now, the fastest growing app market is 18 months to 2.5 years of age. Think, those baby boomers, how old were they when they started working independently on the internet? Not 18 months old, not 18 years old, not 28 years old, and there's all kinds of development that we can't even begin to anticipate for this generation. But I just want to give you a couple of specific examples and then close up of the differences between the generations when it comes to prior learning in the workplace. From a growth and development perspective, boomers are quite content to just get some training. But Gen X's are the ones that everybody got a trophy just for showing up to the soccer games. They want to be educated. And everything has to have a certificate or contribute to a degree or a diploma or something. It has to be recognized. Gen Y, they just want to be coached. They want to be involved in their learning, and it's ongoing and it's continuous. And Gen I, they want to be engaged in their own learning. They want to participate in learning as much as, and teaching as much as learning. They see themselves on an equal footing. When we look at career advancement, boomers, by and large, see advancement as being given greater responsibility, greater money, and a promotion. And then they know that they're progressing. Gen X's, they just want to progress. They might want to do lateral moves. They might want to increase their opportunities. They might want to increase their experiences. Gen Y, they just want to advance their own learning. This is the first generation that looks at employability, not employment. And if they're not convinced that they're going to be working with you forever, but they expect you to help them prepare for their next stage of their career, wherever that might take them. And Gen I just wants to seize every possible opportunity to learn, to develop, to grow, to test, to experiment, to be creative constantly. Now, the last one I want to share with you is just to sort of put it into perspective is the work environments. Now, the work environments, if you're a boomer, basically there were winners and losers. And if you go back to the playground, they decided what they were going to play, and sometimes you were a winner and sometimes you were a loser. Gen X, everybody wins. Everybody gets a trophy. By Gen Y, everybody plays, nobody wins, we don't keep score. There are no scoreboards. Everybody plays. Gen X was the beginning of cooperative games. Gen Y was where it was solidified. And Gen I, everybody wins at something. So here's my last story. I was at an elementary school in the spring, and there was a play day, you know, when it's too hot to be in the classroom and it's almost the end of school, and they were getting ready to run a race, and there were 7 girls all in a row. 6 of them looked very fit and athletic and, you know, equally qualified to run this race. And then there was this young girl, about grade 5, standing next to me, and she clearly was not in the same physical league as the others, and it would be very difficult for her to compete. And she says to me, "Are you going to be here for the race?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "Oh, you're in for a treat." And I said, "Really?" She says, "Yes, you're going to get to see the best last this school has ever seen." I said, "Oh, really? And what exactly does that look like?" And she said, "Just watch me." And the gun goes off and the kids run and she's chugging along behind. "Go, Mary, go. You can do it. You can do it." And at the end, she high-fived them and hugged them and got the crowd going and cheering on. And she was the best last that school had ever seen. And she comes back to me and says, "That's what best last looks like." totally different perspective than older generations when there are winners and losers. My last example I want to share with you is communicating across generations. If we understand sort of where some of this comes from and stop making assumptions or creating myths about what one, they, them, those, they have no respect, depends on your perspective. I sent an email to a group of people not unlike in this room, and it was about a meeting not unlike this, date, time, location, agenda, details, and at the very end, I said, when you get to the bottom, at the bottom of the email, I said, when you get to this point, please confirm your attendance and let me know if you have any questions. So the first response I get back is from Frank. Frank is in his early 60s. We've been working together for a long time. Clearly a boomer by definition, but a traditionalist by behavior. Dear Nora, thank you very much for the email below. Looking forward to the meeting to be held on the 15th. See my PowerPoint attached for my part of the agenda, 10:15 to 10:25. Travel safe, sincerely, Frank. Okay, he's come and he's got no questions. Second one I get back is from a fellow trailing boomer. Nora, got it, no questions, we'll be there. Travel safe, Mary. Now, Mary's one of those trailing boomers. She's figured out that even though she's been trained to write in full sentences and paragraphs, that if you hit return in Outlook, then it automatically capitalizes the next one. So it sort of looks like you're organized, but there's no punctuation required. So Mary's coming and she's got no questions. The next one I get back is from one of our interns. See you. Coming, no questions. But I began to wonder, what would Frank think if he got CU, and what would CU think if he got Dear Nora, blah, 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 blah. And it's clear that they would both come up with the same conclusions. Disrespectful, inappropriate, unprofessional. Frank would not approve of CU. CU would see Dear Nora, sincerely Frank, and think, get a life, move on, I got things to do, places to be, you know, you don't need to repeat everything, it's already there, you don't have to duplicate, like, get on with it. And what is this sincerely Frank business? I know it's from you, it says right there in the from line, from Frank. So as we get these multiple generations in the workforce and we look at their different experiences in education, in life, in learning, we need to recognize that this is a golden opportunity. We have, for the first time, the opportunity to work and learn from each other from all generations. And if we capture this, then the rest of the stuff is going to be a whole lot easier. If we don't, everything else is going to be much harder. It's not the strongest species that shall survive, but that which has the greatest capacity to adapt. And it's going to require each generation in the workplace to adapt just a little bit in order to leverage this true diversity that we have available to us today. You can follow me on Twitter if you're so inclined, or you can talk to me in person.
Michael Stewart is the National Program Manager of the Third Quarter Project, which is just a really dynamic project that I think is most interesting, open to people over the age of 50. And I understand he operates 14 different pilot sites in Canada, and so he's got some great direct experience. So join me in welcoming Michael Stewart.
We did some research, and third quarter, resonated with the crowd as we started talking to them, and really was about, you're in the third quarter of your life. It's not the end. You've still got a lot to give, and it's really taken on a life of its own. It's actually, a lot of people are starting to identify themselves as third quarters in our communities. Firms are looking for third quarter Canadians, and we're actually starting to get a lot of government groups and nonprofit groups talking about third quarter Canadians. So it's, and people like the name, they like being called something other than that. So it's always interesting that when we go out and we work in a lot of these communities, that a lot of people, as they're talking about third quarters, they're presenting on older workers, they kind of come to that realization that, hey, I'm part of that group, I'm a third quarter Canadian. So this project itself is extremely unique. It is a partnership of 4 provincial chambers. The Manitoba Chamber, which initiated the project, the BC Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Chamber of Commerce, and the Atlantic Provinces Chambers of Commerce, representing 7 provincial chambers across the country. We've managed to, in Manitoba, we've really been the focus. We've had the core of our program trying to diversify the types of communities. And we've had pilot communities in some of the other outlying provinces. It's when we started picking our communities, we didn't pick 14 communities that were exactly alike. That's the last thing we wanted to do. We wanted communities that were very unique, offered a lot of different variables in terms of, was there a lot of work opportunities, was there a lot of workers available, and limited opportunities for jobs. And it's been part of our learning process as to what works where and why it works. We've had great support from the Office of Literacy and Essential Skills. They've supported us as we've kind of taken the project and put it through a few different phases. Our latest phase launched in April, which as we're just going forward and we're having discussions on our next steps with the project, and hopefully as we expand out and actually become a truly national program from coast to coast. So the focus is on 50 plus. When we started out this program, it was about 55 plus. One of the early lessons we learned is that 50 is a good starting point, and we did have a cap at 65, but quickly we were informed that 65 is not when I finish work, and we've got workers that are into their 80s who've signed up on the site. We've interviewed. Some of them are some of the most dynamic workers that we've come across. It's really about going beyond the traditional types of job banks. We don't want to be like the website where you go, you see the posting, you apply for it. Because really we see the opportunities where matching can occur and where we can kind of start making connections with companies and workers and starting to get that discussion happening. Again, we're in 14 communities. You can see we're on all the coasts all the way through. Manitoba has the biggest number. We've got 9 communities there. And again, they're all diverse communities. The diversity is probably one of the things that's taught us the most. A lot of the communities are under 10,000 in population. Victoria, which is our largest community to date, which launched in September, and Regina, which launched last year, are in the 200,000 plus population. But the rest of the communities are very small in relation to the populations we're trying to work with. So it's about, you'll notice if you've been on Facebook, this is a little Facebook-ish. We wanted something that people were used to starting to work with. For a lot of people, Facebook is the new tool to communicate. And it's something we know older workers are using. My grandparents and my great-grandparents are all on Facebook, and for them to transition over to something like this was quite easy. And it's other than the photo, which most people haven't really liked putting their pictures up because they still see a lot of connections with picture and as opposed to the focus on the skills. But for the most part, this is really a way for workers to stamp their identity, to build out their profile of who they are and to present themselves to the companies. The tools itself, we use a skills wizard to build out the profiles. We've got an essential skills level assessment as well as some deeper assessments for the workers. One of the really unique things we decided to do for very, very early on was that in order to do any type of really useful type of job matching across the country, we needed to have a common language. So when we built the system out, we had the system built so that the companies and the workers are having the same discussion. So that when a worker in PEI does a profile and a company in BC is looking for a position and they've got opportunities across the country, that when they start doing matching, that they're talking and having the same conversation. And it's there's been challenges with that as we've gone forward, but I think as we've seen now that the companies are starting to enjoy it, the workers are starting to really put their information down. But it's the tool itself, as we've been building down, has allowed us to start to build community-type profiles, which is another unique thing where we can understand at the community level what are companies looking for in terms of skills and essential skills, and what are the workers that we're working with bringing to the table as well, which for us is pretty important to communicate back to the local partners in terms of any organizations to say, okay, this is where the companies are looking, here's where your training is, here's where the workers are, where's some bridging need to occur in terms of, the companies need more technology training, it's not being provided, here's a good direction for you to go to help support that. So the site itself, we feel we've been extremely successful. We've had over 80,000 visitors to the site. That number is probably a month or two old. It's probably up over 100,000 now. We've got over 6,000 unique registered users, and more come on every day. We're estimating about 7,500 by the end of the project. And considering, again, that number of the average population we're dealing with for each of the communities is about 10,000, having 7,500 out of that population base is fairly significant. And also consider that of the generation and the group we're working with, we are looking at groups that they're people that aren't looking for work. They're areas where they've gone to retire and they're retired. South Okanagan is a great example of that. I've come to retire, I'm not interested in working anymore. And there's areas where there's high unemployment and there's lots of people working. So we've got over 2,000 businesses registered, which for the workers, I mean, that's what they're coming for. They want businesses, they want job postings. And probably the most significant number that is a testament of our success is 3,000 job postings. So those companies that have come and posted, we're averaging probably about a job and a half per company. And we're averaging one job for every 2 individuals at this point, which, when we talk about are there job opportunities out there for older workers, there are. These companies are not signing up on our website for, just generally looking for anybody. When they come to us, they post on our website, they're specifically looking for older workers. They're specifically they're there with the knowledge that the applicants that are going to come in, the people that they're going to engage with are 50 plus. The system, again, as I said, does job matching, and the site itself, on average, each job posting has 4 specific matches to it, where the firms or where the workers actually engage and say, I'm interested in moving to the next level. And of those, 40% of all those jobs actually lead to job interviews. And the most significant thing is that those job interviews are leading to jobs. I think last week, when we do a certificate program to recognize our firms, in the town of Selkirk, we sent out 15 certificates to firms, and big and small. We've got the small mom and pop shops, we've got Walmart involved, we've got Safeway involved. So it's all types of organizations, and they're all looking for the skills and what the older workers have to offer. And again, when we started out, as you can see, our job numbers as we moved up, we average over 300 job postings a month, which, day one, we started off with 0 postings. We were happy when we made it to 50 a month. And as we've come into the Christmas holidays, we're seeing the spike again, where we're pushing up to 400 a month, which is, again, fairly significant. That's the number of jobs a month, and number of opportunities for older workers that are being created. And the positions are not just retail jobs. They're not they're not entry-level positions. As you can see, 1 1/3 are at the management, professional, and supervisory level. And we do track that as part of the job wizard when the companies are building out. And again, that's the firms are looking specifically for those individuals to fill those roles. So when we did start, we did see a lot of the jobs were in that retail service industry. So, we've had the success because we've been out there working with the firms to create those opportunities. So in terms of some of the national surveying we've done, and this we've actually got a national business survey we're releasing to the press today, which talks with some of these numbers. But in terms of for business intentions, when it comes to third quarter individuals, over the next year, 80% are likely or certain to hire over the next 2 years. And 38% are certain to hire third quarter workers, of which 61% have hired a third quarter worker over the last 2 years, which means third quarter workers are being hired, they're being looked for, and And that's not just third quarter firms that we engage with. One of the big benefits of being part of the chamber type of project is that we were able to engage with firms that were signed up on our site, as well as just firms in general that were part of the third chamber membership. So that represented a significant number of businesses. So our learnings to date, and we continue to learn every day. One of the really great things about having a pool of individuals as we do is that they provide us tons of feedback on where we need to improve and what works and what doesn't. For the workers, we know that they're not out there looking for work because it's a financial imperative. It's not, I have to work because I need the money. It's, I want to work because I need and I want to have something to do that keeps me active, keeps me in the community. Businesses are interested and willing to hire third quarter Canadians, but really it comes to the firms. The HR and recruitment practices and attitudes still need to shift some, and they still are a barrier. We find our biggest challenge with organizations with HR professionals in place. They tend to be probably more restrictive in terms of, they've got their practice, they've got their process, and this is outside the process. It's not something, why can't we just do it the way I want it instead of, letting us shift to somewhere else? But that's slowly changing as well. But again, it is continuing to be a barrier. The reason we've had the success with the companies and with the workers is because we've made a business case. When it comes to working with companies, really, they've got to be shown the bottom line impact of why this is going to help. And it does sound cold in numbers, but really it is about showing them the advantages of how it's going to help their business to engage and to hire on third quarter workers. We had a firm in Selkirk a few weeks back who were they're in the process right now of recruiting a skilled trades person, and the skilled trade person is going to take 15 years to train up to 100% capacity. A very specific type of job. That means that for the next 15 years, they're going to be working, for the first 5 years, that person's going to be working at 20, 30% capacity. 10 years in, they're going to be working at 60, 70% capacity. So by the time they hit the 15-year mark, they're 100%, they're, a fully participating employee. They hadn't thought about bringing back and bridging that time frame with some mature workers that could, come in day one, have 100% impact on the business line, be there as a mentor to work with that younger worker that they were going to bring in and work with for 15 years. And once we had that discussion with them, it makes sense to them. They identify, they said, hey, that makes a lot of sense. That's going to help my business. we're going to move forward with that. And they were looking across the country just for that opportunity. The other thing we've come to realize is that no one solution works. We work with a lot of organizations in the communities, target niche folder workers in Manitoba and Prince Edward Island, a lot of smaller groups in each of the other the provinces where their TIOW isn't active. It's for us, we do a lot of referrals. We run into a lot of workers where we're not the right path for them. Either they need some skill support or they're looking for something very specific. But it is about, for us, community partnerships has been huge, and that's helped us really, make our inroads in a lot of the communities, because each of the communities we're active in, we do have what we call a community coordinator, and their role is to be the kind of the pathfinder in the community. They're there to connect with the businesses, connect with the older workers, connect with the various groups, and to to get them to talking about it. And a lot of them are leaders in the community, and without that aspect of business leadership and community leadership, I think we probably wouldn't have been as successful as we have been. But they've been probably the biggest advantage to this as well. So that's in a nutshell where we're at. Right now we're looking at going forward and truly national programs, so we're hoping to hear something in the next short few months on that. But it's, when we first started this program, would we have thought we were going to hit 3,000-4,000 job postings? It was probably something we didn't think we were going to do. We were told there were a lot of barriers for older workers and for them getting engaged in the workforce. I think if, in engaging with the businesses, I think they're open. You have to understand that if they've got a challenge, there's a skilled labor shortage today, even with the unemployment rate where it's at, even with the economy where it's at, there's still a skilled labor shortage, which for workers is a huge opportunity. And that's got to be the message we've taken to the older workers is tap into that opportunity. You've got the skills. Let's help you meet the company's needs. Okay, thank you.
So now we're going to move on to the targeted initiative for older workers, and I'm going to call upon Kirsty Jackson. Did I get the right name? Yeah. Kirsty Jackson. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have my note. Kirsty, to come up and introduce some people that are going to talk about the TIOS program. TIOW program. Thank you.
Hi. First, I want to thank you all for remaining after the break. I know we have a large session here today. I have the honor this afternoon of introducing 3 speakers who've traveled quite a long way to speak to you today. These women join us from WISE program, Bell Island, the Targeted Initiative for Older Workers project, and they're going to speak specifically about the use of prior learning assessment portfolios within the Targeted Initiative for Older Workers, which is an employment assistance training and work experience program. And this program is designed specifically for older women. Bell Island is a small, very accessible community with a population of less than 3,000 people. Each day, about 600 of its residents commute 2, and I'm told sometimes 3 hours, to the round trip to St. John's to work. The community's been economically hard hit following the closure of the iron ore mines in 1966, and many of its residents have experienced long-term unemployment. I wanted to say a little bit about WISE, Women Interested in Successful Employment. For the past 20 years, WISE has been a not-for-profit organization in Newfoundland and Labrador, which offers a variety of programs to help women find their career path. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Margaret Madden and Linda Hickey, who both work for WISE Newfoundland, and Marie Lawrence, a participant in a recent TIOW training program and work experience program. But just before I give the microphone over, I did want to briefly provide you with some background information about TIOW. This is a program that was introduced by the Government of Canada in 2006 as a federal, provincial, territorial partnership initiative. The key objective of TIOW is to assist unemployed older workers living in small, vulnerable communities in reintegrating into the workforce through employment assistance, training, and work experience. The program is delivered locally by community-based organizations like the one that you are about to hear from. It's a unique model which gives provinces and the community-based organizations contracted by the provinces the flexibility to tailor projects to the needs and circumstances of participants and local labor markets. Participants must be unemployed. They are normally those between the ages of 55 and 64. This is a cost-shared initiative, and essentially it is administered by provinces and territories. The program is having a very positive impact. To date, over 16,000 unemployed older workers have been targeted through 331 projects across Canada. And the formative evaluation has found the program to be successful. 75% of participants found employment during or after their participation in TIOW, and 44% were employed 8 months after their program participation. These results are particularly positive given that 30% of TO participants do not have a high school diploma. 50% were unemployed for more than 12 months prior to their participation, and almost 60% were in communities with an unemployment rate of over 10% or more. Margaret Madden, who is going to speak to us today about the process of portfolio development, or as she describes it, building a database of skills from life experiences. Herself has a broad database of skills. She was a primary school teacher for 15 years, then a homemaker, and re-entered the workforce as an employment counselor. Helping women develop a portfolio of skills is a passion for Margaret, as you're about to hear. Linda Hickey has worked with WISE for the past 16 years. 5 years ago, when she came to Bell Island, she developed an extraordinary network through her involvement with voluntary organizations within the community. Through her extensive community involvement, Linda has been very successful engaging employers to participate in TIOW. Linda, as you will hear, is also very passionate about empowering women. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Marie Lawrence, who you heard a little bit about this morning. Marie heard about her local TIOW program in her community through a word-of-mouth network of friends and family. Marie hadn't been in the paid workforce since 1983 when she arrived at the program. But through the development of a portfolio about her life experiences, Marie has been able to identify key transferable skills which she has now translated into paid employment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Margaret Madden, Linda Hickey, and Marie Lawrence.
Technology, I'm a traditionalist, so hey, I have to make sure that my technology skills are not too rusty here. Okay, my name's Margaret Madden, and I work with WISE, Women Interested in Successful Employment. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about the targeted initiative for the older worker in Bell Island, Newfoundland, and hopefully give you some insight into how prior learning has helped these participants. WISE, I will probably doing a little tiny bit of repetition on our organization, but hey, we got to give the punch when it's there, if opportunity is there. We've been incorporated since 1987, so we'll celebrate our 25th anniversary in 2012. We are a not-for-profit women's organization who is very employment-focused and assists women towards employment. We offer many group programs, and in addition, we offer one-on-one counseling. Our group programs consist of a lot of different areas. One of our mainstays is career planning, which is a 9-week program where we transition women to decide on what career they want to pursue. So a lot of them are career changers or entering careers for the first time. We also offer essential skills programs, portfolio development, job search, and of course the targeted initiative for the older worker, which we started in 2008. We have a portfolio history of prior learning assessment recognition since we started in 1987. Our career planning program is built on a times change model from the Ontario Women's Directorate. So we have been doing components of the portfolio all along since 1987. But in 2008, we brought in the PLA Center in Halifax and had some training there and were credentialed by them. Our funding is through the provincial and federal governments. Okay. The targeted initiative for the older worker program on Bell Island started in 2008. We did our first 15 women at that time, and then we had another program last year, and we have another one just started this year, just 4 weeks ago. What we do is even though like they're looking at their past, and a lot of their past hasn't had a lot of credentialing and diplomas, we are using the PLAR to bring those out, but we're also developing new skills and new certificates and diplomas that these women can bring to the workforce after they finish the training component, which is 21 weeks long. So I have the portfolio put first because our portfolio is layered throughout the whole program. We also offer a program called ACT, which is put on by the John Howard Society. It's a 3-week program on problem solving and decision making. It's called adaptive creative thinking. And it really sets the tone for the program because these women, for the first time in their lives, have to sit down and really think about how are they good problem solvers, and if they're not, how they end up to, determine how they're going to solve problems in the future. We also offer a Superhost Atlantic certificate, which is a customer service certificate put out by Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador. They get a first aid certificate in CPR. We do a lot of technology and computer literacy, and I think that very few of these women would even have had any exposure to a computer. They have no computers at home. And after the program is finished, a lot of them have put in a Christmas request for computers for home. And, they have a hard time on Bell Island trying to get internet access, but they managed to finagle that too. So they're all pretty well online now and doing really well. Financial literacy, we do a program called Money Matters. Capacities building. Okay. Capacities building, which is learning how to be a leader in your community, is put on by the Vibrant Communities. We use the Essential Skills Literacy Workbook and layer that over some other essential skills, and that's out of the Essential Skills in Ottawa. For each group, we've done a different literacy project as well. The first literacy project done the first year was a historical list of stories of Bell Island and these women growing up in a mining community and about their parents and their fathers working in the mine. And that is, we are looking for some funding right now to have that published. The second literacy project that was done last year was a brochure that was put out in partnership with the Town Council of Wabana that we had published and put out as a tourist for the tourist season this year. I think it was 5,000 of them, was it, Linda? And we have an example of that there. So that was a real learning curve for them. They learned how to develop this brochure, and they gave a special presentation to the Town Council of Wabana, and they were so impressed with it that they helped them to publish it. This year they're going to do a cookbook with pictures, so we're waiting for that project to get underway now. We also do healthy living and nutrition, so a lot of the women learn about how to look after themselves health-wise, because it's very important for 50 to 60-year-olds if we're going to live to be 100. And last year, our group did the entrepreneurship with the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs, and that was it was a 10-week program, 1 day a week, where women learned how, if they wanted to start their own business. And also we do other things like time management and stress management, and they get certification for those. And this is Marie with myself and one of the other ladies who did the first year portfolio development program with me, Kim Gillard, and I'm sure some of you know her because she's been involved in portfolio development for a long time. But I'm not sure how many people here have a real background in PLAR, so I'll try not to be too lengthy on the components of the PLAR process. But we look on it as a journey of self-discovery and reflection to capture the richness of people's experiences, which transitions these people towards their future goals. And some of the words that come into mind when you think of what you do for those women through the portfolio development process are healing, because a lot of them have a very varied background with a lot of emotional roller coaster that has gone with it. They feel a great sense of satisfaction. They do find it a challenge because a lot of them with the low literacy find that they have to learn to write and capture their experiences. They certainly have to reflect because it's all about finding out what your skills are. They have to be honest with themselves. They find that when they do this, it's a lot of significance for their lives. they have a lot of skills verification and they have a lot of pride when they complete the portfolio. When I was thinking about this presentation today, I was thinking about portfolio development in general, and I thought of it and likened it probably to a puzzle. You know, all these puzzles that you get in boxes that you have to put together. And I was thinking that these women, they're sort of in a box when you sort of find them or start with them. And then all the pieces are there, but they don't know how to put those pieces together or how to represent themselves as the person that they are or the full person. So it's after all the de-jumbling and everything that they come to realize, gee, look, I'm a neat little package with a lot of skills to offer. So they get to see their full picture. So they look at their past and present learning, informal and formal, to help recognize their skills and potential. And the one thing that we found with the targeted initiative on Bell Island was that a lot of these women, I think there was probably over half of the first group that had probably grade 5 to grade 8 education. So you're not, going to, is not going to be the same kind of a portfolio development process as you or I would do. So you really have to sort of take them and hold their hand along the way. So they don't have any credentials or diplomas. Very few of them have high school education, and if they did have high school education, maybe one or two probably had a post-secondary certificate, maybe in shorthand typing or something like that. That was very old. Most of them, say 90%, probably wouldn't have worked in 30 to 40 years outside the home. So it's just to give you a background of what they were like. So you had to dig into their experiential life learning to process the skills that would lead to employment. So like their homemaking, their child care, elder care, volunteer work, and things like that. So why did we decide on portfolio? Well, I guess initially it was a little bit of a hit and miss kind of thing, because what happened was both Kim and I had done the portfolio development training with the PLA Center in Halifax, and I just thought it would be a really good idea to do our practitioner certificate on Bell Island. And we found the mother lode, because it worked so well that since then we just feel that it's the big catch for the women, and it really puts everything in place for them. So it gives them a recognition of their skills, and they're able to promote their skills through their portfolio. Because we not only do the master portfolio where they have everything, we also do an employment portfolio for them, so that when they go out to do their job search, they have their employment portfolio in place as well. It really helps them some of them have, in the second group, have also started self-employment, so that was really good for their job search as well, like to start their own employment. Many of these are entering the workforce after a gap, and they need to transition from home to work, so that was a really good way for them to have an idea of all the skills that they have. Some of them might have been changing a career that they had before, and they were starting a new one, or they might have been starting their career for the very first time. Some of them may have never worked. I don't think you worked outside the home at all, did you, Marie? Until she got her job after the targeted initiative. So she'd been home for 30 plus years. And the legacy is a really good draw-in for these women, because they find that they like to leave something as a legacy. And because of that, like, their back part of their portfolio has a lot of pictures and things of themselves and their families. And the only thing that we don't cover in the portfolio that we do with these people is validating skills for accreditation. That would not be one of the things that we would be doing in this portfolio process. Okay, so we looked a little bit at what these women were like pre-portfolio and what they gained from the portfolio process. And it's not going to come in. So, okay. First, they start off with limited education, training, and literacy, which I have already described. and they find out that they have a lot of skills verification. What I found too with the program was that being older workers between the ages of 50 and 64, a lot of them had to dig back into their past for their life story and their chronology. And I remember one woman in particular. I thought she was a blank slate, tabula rasa. It was like there was nothing, a blank face in front of you. And it took her about a month to realize that, you know, she did have a past, because I guess she never thought about it before. Anyway, when she finally came to life, she was one of my greatest writers, and she had the most fantastic stories for that historical book. So I was really proud of her. They don't realize that they have skills. They think that the things that they do every day, like homemaking and cleaning and baking and looking after children and looking after elderly parents, they don't realize that these are skills that they can offer to a paid workforce. And then when you get, you know, through the process, they know that they have lots of skills and knowledge, which when Marie presents later, she will verify for you. The one thing that we found was that a lot of them stayed at home. They didn't go out into the community. Sometimes when they were raising their children, they might have gone and helped at the school a bit, but they didn't really get involved. They sort of were more isolated at home. And the support network that they gained through the Targeted Initiative project really, and a lot of group participation, like we really get involved in community with them, like we go to Santa Claus parades all dressed up and crazy things like that, and red hatters and all kinds of things that Linda's going to talk about. They have low confidence when they come in. Like, it's just amazing how they don't want to speak up in their group. They don't want to stand up in front of anybody and present. They have fear of failure and fear of exposure because they dwell on the fact that they don't have a lot of formal education. And so they gain so much confidence. They have a negative age bias and self-perception. You can just imagine they've been home for 30 or 40 years. Who's going to hire me? Who's going to want someone my age? And then after, they have such a positive attitude towards that. They don't have any documentation. They have never, they spend the whole 21 weeks going around into attics and basements and boxes and everything else looking for certification, even if they did go to school, or even if they got an award for attendance, or even if they had something that was an appreciation for volunteer or anything like that. They have no idea where they are at all, and they have no idea that they mean anything. And at the end, they have a marketing and presentation package with their master and their employment portfolio. Okay, the benefits of the Targeted Initiative project and the portfolio. It gave them, like, as you go through the step-by-step process of the week, of the number of weeks, which for some groups would be 10 weeks, and for the group on Bell Island would be longer than that because of the literacy issue, so we take more time to do assessments and write their learning narratives and do their chronology. But it gives them a format and a structure to know how to organize their information. It also gives them an idea how to identify their inventory and credentials. It gives them the confidence. They learn how to set goals. One woman said to me, "Why would you goal set when you don't go to work?" And she just had no idea that you could write down your goals. You can have goals for leisure or whatever. You know, you have goals every day of your life, and you need to write them down. You need to set them and set time frames and things like that, but she had no idea. The one thing that they do, within, say, a month to two months, you will find that they will be optimistic that there is employment can be obtainable. They, of course, the benefit is they have their formal job search documents and their self-employment marketing tool. A really big benefit of the Targeted Initiative is their increase in mental health stability and their respect from self and others. I just gave a list of the different things that they put in a portfolio. Not going to read through all of them, but the one at the bottom, the memories and the photos, are really important to these women because it's where they're grounded and it's what they have a very special attachment and love for their family, their past family, and their grandchildren and their children and things like that. So you will see a very rich part of their portfolio is in that section. Some of the things that you have to consider when you're looking at the practitioner, from the practitioner point of view, is the structure and process of the portfolio, which I sort of alluded to earlier. And that's because for these women with the literacy issues, it's a slow start. And you really have to encourage them a lot. There's a lot of one-on-one. And we do the PLA Center's adult learner model there because it's a little bit slower and it really looks at the adult learner in a different kind of way than the regular portfolio and helps to pace the information a little bit slower. One of the things that we found with the doing the portfolio is that the person who's delivering the portfolio for these group of targeted initiative people is that the person has a strong labor market lens. So you need someone who has a career and employment counseling background because they know the labor market, they know how to do the resumes and the interview techniques and things like that that are required for the back to work. It takes a lot of time and skills by an instructor to be able to draw out all the information from these people and, you know, because they will be very matter of fact at the beginning. Oh, I just, you know, cleaned and cooked, and then you're sort of going and I think I went to a session earlier today when they were talking about how you drill down all these things and find out how they did them and how many people they did them for and what kind of equipment they used and things like that. I found that on Belle Island, because the women didn't have a lot of computer skills, that I was the typist in residence, which made it very, very time-consuming for me, especially in the nighttime. But I just found that the portfolio itself looked a lot better if it was typed rather than written, especially where their writing skills weren't really strong. But anyway, I've sequestered a couple of people to help me this year, so I'm looking forward to that. The participant time, like a lot of times you don't realize that you expect these participants to do a monumental amount of work, so you really have to explain to them up front that the process is lengthy and that they will need to be doing homework. A couple of the other things that are really important is that they have a non-judgmental environment. Like, you can't say, why don't you have an education, or, you know, like your literacy level is low or anything like that. You just encourage them, you meet them where they are, and you build on what you have. And you have to get down to the grassroots and be with them in the process. Sharing and safeguarding of information, like it's a lot of confidentiality, and we find that it's really important that the women understand that right from day one. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a visual, I suppose, of the work-focused outcomes, because these women, these are the things that they do in their daily lives. And we found that our first program, like all the women, after the 21-week training session, were able to find a work placement and get into the workforce. And they found it from these kinds of skills. So it's very doable. But I think you have to owe it to the portfolio process where they can demonstrate through their narratives and things that they can do this work and get your resume done accordingly. The one thing that I was listening to Richard Florida this morning, and he said, you make a mistake when you only look at the shell. And it really hit me that the shell we see at the beginning certainly is not the inner self that shines through at the end for these women, because they're pretty phenomenal. I have a couple of case studies here that I'll go through very quickly, if I may. Yeah. The first one was a 56-year-old who had a grade 5 education. She was an income support recipient with no paid work experience, no confidence, no employment prospects, didn't think that paid employment was any possibility for her. It was a really hard decision for her to come to the program. She didn't feel capable of completing the work at first. She needed a lot of one-on-one help. And she achieved far beyond her expectations. She got her first aid, which she thought she'd never get. And through the PLAR process, she recognized skills in childcare, elder care, homemaking, cleaning, school lunch program, and catering volunteer. So she's worked in paid positions as a cleaner, caterer, and home support work for a special needs client since she's finished the Targeted Initiative project. And the last one, this lady here, 64, she came with some paid work experience. She found it extremely difficult for any past events or learning experience. She was a very descriptive writer, and she found her past and a passion for writing. She was a great inspiration for the other participants. On graduation day, she was one of the speakers who did such a phenomenal job that members of the audience approached her and recommended she enter politics, and she found employment as a manager in the service industry. And thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks, Margaret, for all that. I'm not going to take too much of your time. Margaret has given you a lot of the background. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how in this small, isolated community of less than 2,800 people, we were actually able to engage employers in this process. And just a little overview, there's beautiful Belle Island, and it's about a half-hour's drive from our capital city of St. John's, and then a 20-minute ferry ride to get there. And these are just some pictures. I'll go through them really quickly, but it's all about how we empower these women to get them ready to go into the workforce. So just some quick ones. Getting ready to do a portfolio. Some of the group work that was done. There's the graduates. Listening intently. Soaking up information. Again, an isolated community, only 2,800 people living there, and approximately about 20 small, mostly mom and pop businesses. So how did we access them? Through contact with these individuals one-on-one. I actually went out into the community with every business that was there and talked about our program, how it worked, how it was funded, what were the women actually doing in the classroom. Some of the comments that came back to me were, well, I know you guys are up there, but what are you actually doing? So we actually I put together a booklet, and I just want to show you briefly. And I think this was probably the biggest benefit that we had of sharing the information and communicating with the employers. I put together the booklet that gave a complete overview of what exactly was what I call the TAWI program, the Target Initiative for Older Workers. What is it? How does it work? Where does the funding come from? So I gave them an overview and sat and explained it to them. The second portion was a letter outlining what the skills these women were partaking in within the program. So a list of the credentials, as Margaret had mentioned, in the training that was available to these employers. And then there was a wage subsidy that was attached to the TAWI program as well. And I actually did a breakdown of how the wage subsidy worked, right, and what they would actually have to pay a person if they hired them, and what we would give them back as a wage subsidy. And that, they told me, was a huge benefit because they never really understood how that worked and where would the money come from and how long would we have to wait for the money. Because they were small businesses, they couldn't afford to wait for money. Right? They needed it like as quickly as possible. Right? So, and I also went through that hiring an older worker did not necessarily mean 40 hours a week. It could be 20 hours, it could be 30 hours, so there was a breakdown of each one of them designed. And then there was also a copy of the wage subsidy form that was presented to them and how they could fill that out. And just the knowledge that they knew that that form was coming directly to me. So they had that contact with me all of the time. It wasn't going somewhere up in government or out in cyberland and they would probably be weeks or months trying to get payment back. It was coming back very quickly to them. So this we found was a big asset. Through talking with some of the employers within the community, when I went to them individually and said, can I have some of your time? I want to talk to you about what's actually happening with the women in the program. One of the businesses, when I sat and talked with him, he said, it was a local gas station. And he actually said he was so thankful that I had went and shared the information with him. Because he said, now I have a knowledge base and I'm informed about what's really happening. And he said, I'm really thankful that you took the time to come to share that with me, because I was not aware. He didn't know what we were doing in the program. He didn't know what the center was. He didn't know anything about it. Another lady who worked at the local supermarket, she said she was so happy to know that there were some credentials for training that was part of the program. And the most of the language was customer service, because we had a supermarket, and obviously cashiers in the supermarket. I cannot afford to pay these people to go to the training, nor can I afford to pay them to walk to the training. Save for around $250 have what PLAR can go in and work. There were changes of mindsets in the community, right? We got out there and into the community, started explaining how our program, what we were doing. The community started business fraud, right? And that was very important. Understanding of how the substance work. There was ongoing weekly support. Right? That was everywhere I went within the community. I had made sure I took the time to go and say, how are things going? And did you know this is available? And I have this information for you. So that was continuous. So they felt a little bit safe there. I'm going to move on a little bit. I'm quickly going through because I know time is not on our side. Each of the participants in the TOWIE program were ambassadors within the community. We talked about community, fostering community pride. You had a right to be proud about what we were doing in that program. We had a right to be proud about the certificates that they were obtaining. Margaret talked about the Bell Island Women's History Book. Right? We're actually talking about putting that on display at the local mining museum there. Again, that was a sense of pride. Everybody had a story to tell, and they were part of the story, and it was my mom or my dad or whatever, and that went out. The women actually did a craft beer, and they partnered with the Boys and Girls Club in the community. The tourist brochure, which we have here, that was a huge partnership piece. This was a part of the literacy, but it was also tied in with the town and with WISE, and that brochure is actually in use on the island. So obviously there's a lot of pride that comes with that as well there. We have a Red Hat Society. I don't know if you're aware of the Red Hat Society, but we're a big Red Hat Society on Bell Island. And that was all about the inclusion of having a social outlet for these women to go and have an opportunity to learn outside of a classroom and in a fun environment. Summer festivals. I was totally engrossed in some volunteer activities and got the women involved. Prior to doing the PLAR and the TOWIE project, they had this idea somehow that I have nothing to offer. I have no skills. I can't volunteer because I don't know how to do that, right? And they quickly became involved in volunteer activities, which started building confidence. And there was some self-employment initiatives that we talked about. Let's start creating your own jobs. Right? Maybe we don't have to look too far. And we actually had one woman in last year's program who is now designing and sewing her own scarves, and she has her own business on Bell Island, and she cannot keep up with the orders for these scarves that she's selling. So that was another one of the initiatives. They became really knowledgeable and skilled in their interview techniques. Through the PLAR process, the resume writing, and we actually heard back from employers that they said, you know what, I'm so blown away with their knowledge. I'm a bit scared on the other end because they're so knowledgeable, right? And they were making informed decisions about the world of work. They actually had what we call the dream day. What do you want to do? What is the thing that you want to do most? And let's see if we can achieve that for you. And funny enough, for a lot of them, we did, right? I just want an optimistic outlook and a positive energy in the community. We kind of took our own attitude was that if you're going to talk negative, then we don't want to play ball with you. Right? So it was positive, it was engaging, it was, we can make it happen. And that went on throughout the 21 weeks within the program. We were constantly educating ambassadors in the community. And I just want to show you some stats that we're really, really proud of. The first program that we did back in 2009, 2010, which was Group 1, this is 1 year, 8 months post-program. We had 14 participants in that program, and 100% of those participants obtained employment throughout the whole process of TOWIE and PLAR. So we're very proud of those stats. And then last year's program, which is just 8 months ago, 77% of that group have obtained employment in this small, tiny community. And just to let you know as well, that the population being 2,800, there's only about 225 women that are actually between the ages of 50 to 64 within this community. So we're reaching and empowering a fair group of them. And one of the things that we say at WA is that if you empower a woman, you empower her family, and if you empower a family, you empower a community, and hence we create economic development through that. And I think I'm nearly done. Just some more stats there. And I have a couple of stories too, but if we're going to be hanging around for a little bit the next couple of days, I'd be happy to share some really nice success stories of how these women got out there. But I don't want to take away from Marie. Okay, so thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My portfolio, well, it starts like this. I never thought I would ever get a job. I was on income support for over 25 years. I came from an abusive relationship. I felt a sense of hopelessness. I didn't have a high school, grade 9. I did have a 1-year training completed over 25 years. What happened? TIOW happened. Portfolio happened. My sister told me about TIOW. I looked at it as an opportunity to do something with my life and to get out of the house. We started a portfolio and were asked to do a chronological record. I thought, oh my God, gosh, what will I do with that? But when I think back, I thought of negative. I was so negative as well as the positive. I thought of a lot of emotions. The group environment had a very positive impact on me. I love teamwork and the group environment. I had a lot of support from the women and from the instructors I love so much. I had a lot of support from my family, my friends. I didn't realize how many skills I did have until I finished this program. The most I gained was a positive attitude. That's something I didn't have. I had come from a very negative person. I was a very negative person, and the portfolio and the TIOW changed that for me. My family can't believe how much I've changed. I am so proud of myself for what I'm doing now. I am making a contribution and feeling really good about myself. I am now of income support. I am bringing triple the amount of income home. I was able to set goals and complete them. And a goal paper. I had a vision board to get a job, to get a new car, to get my house renovated. Now I have done all that. And I'm still moving ahead. I still have more goals I want to complete. I wouldn't have done it only for the target of initiation and portfolio. I would like to give you a few samples. I will show you my vision board. I'm a bit nervous.
You're doing great.
I like this one. I really like this one. Now I'm in control of my life. I'll go through. Oh, here's my new car. Matter of fact, something like this. And this is where we renovated my house. This is my family. My dog. My daughter wrote me a letter when I finished the program. It was really, really nice. I would like to read it to you. It says, "Dear Mom, Mom, you are a great woman. You are strong, courageous, loving, and caring. You taught us to be the same and to always try and get the best in life. What you didn't know was the best in life was having a mother like you. So whatever you receive and whatever you do in life comes second. We didn't realize what you have sacrificed for us. You have given up your dreams and the things that you want so you could dream and not want anything for us. In reality, we had everything. We had a mother who gave us rules, morals, strengths, and sweet security. And a sense that we are loved more than life itself. We gave up everything for us. You never asked for anything in return. You never showed for fear or sadness, for a concern that would upset us. You stood up for us when no one else would. You never judged us when we got into trouble, but were there for us to help us get through. You let us lead our lives and make mistakes. As good times and as we got older, we started to see things that we didn't see as children, which is you. As someone other than a mom, we see you as a friend, a sister, a mentor, especially a daughter. This gives us a new perspective and causes us to admire and love you even more. If that's even possible, your love, your attention, your guidance have made us who we are. You have given us a sense of family we wouldn't have gotten if it weren't for a mother like you. Love, your babies, Lisa and Wayne." And that really touched me. And as Margaret said, if it wasn't for TIOW and portfolio, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Now I have a job. I worked at the Belle Bay. Linda had the hotel up there. I worked there for 12 weeks. He didn't want me to leave, but he had no other choice. He was closing the hotel down. But before the hotel closed down, I was offered another job in St. John's in a government building, and that's where I'm to now. And I'm going to be there for the next 3 years, and hopefully a lot longer, I'm hoping. But if not, I will find another job. I have the goals to do it now. I'd just like to thank you.